Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome back to the Vandy247 podcast. I'm Billy Derrick, and we are brought to you by the Wash House. Big basketball episode today. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. With 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area, just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry. Ready to be put away? Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Big episode today. Nice crew today alongside Joey Dwyer and Tim Thompson. I'm Billy Derrick, and we're going to talk all things Vanderbilt basketball. Of course, after the win on Saturday, Vanderbilt fans are fired up and probably even more excited now about this Alabama game tonight. Tim is in Alabama right now. He'll be on the call with Kevin Ingram. Joey will be down there as well. Joey, I'll start with you. We got a chance to get our thoughts out after the game, but any other thoughts coming out of that game, that really magical win on Saturday for Vanderbilt heading into tonight's tough road test at Alabama?
Yeah, I wrote about it yesterday, but it almost feels eerie to 22-23 when they beat Ole Miss by 3 in a game that was kind of a snoozer, and then go beat Tennessee by 1, and that turns their season. I think tonight, if their season is going to take a next step towards an NCAA tournament level season, you're going to look back at that Tennessee game as a turning point in a game that really solidifies that, man, they can do it against some teams that maybe people didn't think they could do it against. That win was Mark Byington's signature win, and I'm not sure that they're done from here. I think that game opens up a lot of possibilities for them the rest of the way. Their second quad one win. Tim, they're for real, and I think that game shows you that they can do some things beyond just having a good non-conference slate.
Yeah, Joy, I think, you look at a Tennessee team that's very good defensively, and, you look at the score and, we score 76 points against them. Now, I will say this, I thought we played really well. Now, when Zakai Ziegler went out of the game, at the end of, in the first half, I thought that propelled us to where they didn't have one of their best defensive players out on the floor. And then we made a little bit of a flurry right there, at the end. And I think that was significant. But, when you score 76 points against a Tennessee team that was really, I think they were giving up maybe 62, something like that. I think that's pretty impressive. Now, those last 3 minutes, I tell people we were leaking oil down the stretch. But, we found a way to win. And I think it's one of those things where I know Mark, wanted to have a signature win, not only for the team, for sure, but for the fans. I mean, I think Coach Byington knows what his team's all about. But I think he wanted to, show the fans that, hey, we're going to be competitive in this league and we can win games against high-level competition.
Guys, if you have comments, questions, fire away. We'll get them to Tim and Joey for that matter. Tim, we're going to pepper you with questions here because obviously you've been close with this program. Going back to the Tennessee game, did you know that Vanderbilt, whether it's Jaylen Carey or McLaughlin inside and even Hogard in the post, I didn't expect Vanderbilt to dominate the post at times the way they did. Now, this is a different front court for Tennessee than maybe we're used to, but they've still got Cade Phillips, who's an athlete, and Okpara, who can be, can be a little bit of a load down there. But this is not your Admiral Schofield, Grant Williams type where they'll get the ball consistently and bully you. Were you surprised that, especially Carey? Carey was huge in that game, and I didn't necessarily expect all of that from him, especially going up against, a Tennessee front court that I didn't think Vanderbilt matched up great against.
Yeah.
But, did that surprise you at all?
Carey's a guy that, he's young. Coach Byington says, he's 19 years old. He's just really young. But you look at his body and you think he's, 23 years old. He's big, strong. The thing that I try to point out to people is when we were playing our pre-conference stuff, we were playing Southeast Missouri State, Austin Peay, teams like that. And he would take that big body and he'd go in there and all of a sudden, boom, foul, and it would be on him. And, he got in foul trouble and, he had to sit every now and then. And all of a sudden, at LSU, he goes into the first SEC game and he's like, whoa, these refs are going to let me play. And so now his mentality is, and his confidence is such that, hey, now I'm going to be able to take this big body and I'm going to be able to go down inside and I'm not going to worry about fouls. They're going to let us play in this league. And so that's going to help me with the way my body is. And I think that's the thing that has changed is a little bit of his mentality, knowing that he can play physical and not get tagged for fouls, doing what he's doing.
I think the foul thing has been a big thing with him. Like you mentioned, smaller bodies. I don't think he really knew what to do with a lot of those. I also think he has to be a big factor for them going forward. Just what kind of role do you think he has to play if this team's going to be a tournament team? And do you think that maybe he gets complete autonomy of the offense like he has? Obviously, he had those few turnovers where he kind of dribbled it off his foot, and I think fans were ready to give him the yank, but Byington has seemed to really back him and believe in him this whole time. He told me this offseason he's better than anybody really thinks he is, and I think we're starting to see that a little bit. But as he grows up, how big of a piece does he have to be to this?
Well, I think he has to be a vital piece because you have to have a guy down low at the block that can do some damage, that can defend, that can rebound, that kind of thing. And I think, Coach Byington, to your point, Joey, when he had those couple turnovers, you think, oh gosh, we got to get him out of the game. But, he's young, he's learning. And I think that kind of confidence by Coach Byington in him kind of has given him the opportunity to say, as players, and we've all played, when you're worried about making a mistake and hearing the buzzer and getting taken out, you don't play with the kind of confidence that you probably should. And I think Coach Byington's a coach that wants these kids to play with a lot of confidence. And he understands that, you make mistakes and you do those kind of things, and we're going to learn from them. And I think that's the most important thing to Coach Byington is, hey, you make mistakes, let's learn from it, and let's not make them again down the road. But I think he has to be an integral part of what we're doing because of his big body and what he can do.
Tim, we got a comment here on Tyler Tanner, and I think it was big having multiple ball handlers in that game. And this, Joey Clay's going to eat his crow on that take there, taking over the offense. But Tennessee struggled without Ziegler on the floor, like you said, and Gainey's not he can be a primary ball handler, but ideal world, the Bishop Boswell kid, I think, is more of a guy that can carry those minutes. He's banged up with a shoulder, I think, right now. But Vanderbilt being able to bring in Tanner behind Hogard as well as Huffman, there was really not a ton of drop off there. Now Hogard's a better distributor. He's the leader of that offense. But Tim, I thought it was big being able to bring in Tanner. He didn't turn the ball over. He forced a turnover on Ziegler in a big moment. Huffman did turn it over there on the travel, but still did a fine job outside of that. Would you agree there that they're all point guards, right? According to the roster anyway. But I thought that was big, especially against Tennessee in a moment where Tennessee maybe wanted another ball handler or two, especially with Ziegler out.
Yeah, I think Coach Barnes, if he would have had another guy like Tyler Tanner on his team, he'd have been a little bit more satisfied with, what was going on. But, I asked you two, you guys have watched Zakai Ziegler over the years. How many times has he been stripped at half court?
Not many.
Not many.
Yeah.
Probably count them on two fingers. Maybe. Well, one of them was Tyler Tanner. And that kid, not only does he lead the team and not turn the basketball over, but defensively, he puts us in a situation where he gives us energy and and intensity, and the other guys feed off him like that. And then, you got Grant Huffman, who, it was sick and didn't get a lot of minutes against Tennessee, but, he's a guy that can handle the basketball. He can defend. So you look at our roster and you see, even Jason Edwards, he can dribble the basketball and he could probably play point, some spot things. He's better off the ball. But at the same time, I think depth-wise at that position, we're pretty solid when it comes to, Hogard, Huffman, and Tyler Tanner.
Clay, I'll address you first before we get into the next question. I don't think it was a terrible take. I think you're a year away, though. Tyler Tanner, I think he's going to be the guy next year, and I think they kind of have that in mind. And maybe they'll add another veteran point guard because I think they always want a few ball handlers on the floor. But I think that's what they have in mind next year. So I don't think it's a terrible take in that regard. But Tim, I was curious from your angle, how much of the shot making did you think was sustainable? Because Jason Edwards hit that huge transition three that a lot of times you'd consider an ill-advised shot. MJ Collins missed that dunk that he made. He missed it against South Carolina, made it against Tennessee. It seemed like everything went right for them. The percentage still wasn't excellent. I think they shot 38% from three or something, which I thought it would have been higher just by watching the game. But how much of that shot making do you think was, man, we're playing against Tennessee, there's a huge crowd, let's make shots today, let's have some confidence, versus, well, the offense is starting to click in a way Mark Byington didn't think it was in that South Carolina game?
Well, I think part of it is when you start to hit shots early, you hit a couple early, then it gets contagious. And I think that's what happened. In previous games, we started out slow, we weren't hitting shots, and all of a sudden that gets contagious as well. And, I think Tyler Nickel, knocked down some shots. He had that 4-point play. Actually, Jason Edwards, he had a wide open 3-ball in front of the Vanderbilt bench near the end of the that, it was almost kind of on line with where Kevin and I were sitting. And I thought that thing was in. And if he would have dropped that one, I think it would have been game over right there. But I don't necessarily think that it's who you're playing and that kind of thing. I just think it's, if you get into a rhythm and you start hitting some open shots and you get that confidence, and you and I don't want to jump to Alabama right now, but they're not a great defensive team. I think we're going to get shots tonight, but against a team like Alabama, you got to make shots, and so. But I just think that Tennessee game, I think we got up 16 at one point, and I guess my concern is closing out games. How do we close out games? And I think we have to have some continuity in our offense down the stretch. I think there's been too much ball pounding. AJ, he's a great leader, and he's a guy that wants to get everything on his shoulders, and he wants to win the game. But I think Coach Byington wants to have that ball movement and set screens and get guys open, and then have a guy like AJ within the offense break a guy down, get into the middle of the lane, and do what he does best. So that's probably my biggest concern is closing games out down the stretch when you have a lead like that.
One more thing from Saturday from me. Chris Magnon, I mean, that was the game of the season for him. I think at one point in the first half, he was plus 13. And, he was so impactful, and he's the type of guy that Rick Barnes, that is a Rick Barnes type player that gives Vanderbilt trouble in the past, where, he doesn't do a ton offensively, but he'll get rebounds. He'll play tough. He'll defend you. His block, just like McLaughlin's block against South Carolina, you could argue won the game. I mean, for him to go up there against Chaz Lanier, their go-to guy, to block that, I thought was huge. I mean, Joey asked, is the shooting sustainable? That feels like something that's sustainable for Magnon, especially with his early minutes, where he's a guy where you ask him, hey, first 4 or 5 minutes, Chris, just go crazy. Just go nuts. Yeah. It feels like he's able to do that and really frustrate teams. And I'm sure there's not a ton of Tennessee fans that want to see Chris Magnon back out there again.
Yeah, you look at Meshack. In my opinion, he's very similar to Meshack, from Tennessee. Yeah. Lockdown defender. He's physical. He can rebound the basketball. Not a great outside shooter, but can shoot the ball from outside. But, that play on Chaz Lanier, I can tell you right now, this is just my opinion, but I thought Chaz Lanier, when he, gives the little head fake, drives by him, he's like, this is over. It's lay up this guy. And the one thing that Mannion does, he never gives up on a play. Never. He never thinks he's out of a play because of his athletic ability. And it was on display right there because, Lanier thinks he's got an easy layup, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, here he comes. And I mean, I saw the different angles on it, and it was 100% legitimate clean block. There was no body contact. It was just up, pin that basketball, block it off the rim. And then you got to give Grant Huffman a lot of credit to be able to get that basketball before it goes out of bounds, because that would have given, Tennessee another possession with time on the clock as well. So I love the kid. I mean, I just think that he's one of those guys that, can guard multiple positions. If he gets switched on a point guard, he can go. If he gets switched on a 4, he can go. He really can go 1 through 4, from a standpoint of being able to guard defensively.
For sure. I think that's the type of guy we talk about. You have to have a Tyler Nickel to win in the SEC. You have to have a Chris Magnon as well. I think Tennessee's got it. Vanderbilt's got it with him. I look at Alabama, though, as a team that's a little bit different than Tennessee. I think the style is very different. I think it's pretty similar to what Vanderbilt wants to do. Tim, just initial thoughts of the matchup. It feels like Alabama is one that Vandy could lose to by 30, and you wouldn't be surprised, but also Vanderbilt could go out and beat by 10, and it wouldn't necessarily be a shock either.
Yeah, Joe, I think you're right. I mean, you start looking at and I look at SEC stats now. I really don't look a lot back at, the first 12 or 13 games. I mean, and then don't get me wrong, you look at Alabama and you see who they played. They don't dodge anybody. So, they've got a great record, but you look at, they're number 1 in the SEC in scoring at 91 points a game, but they're number 15 in defense. So you're going to be able to score against them. I mean, just perfect example. You look at the Alabama-Kentucky score, 102 to 97. Okay. They're going to score 102 points, but they're going to give up a lot of points. And I think, tonight in the situation where we run our offense, I think we're going to be able to get shots. And I think the critical thing is we got to make some shots. You got to make free throws on the road. And I think hopefully our defense stands up in the way that Alabama wants to run their, transition and the way they spot up at the 3. A lot of times, when you're playing teams, they tell you to get back. Well, and then, you guard from the rim out. Not against Alabama. You don't do that. Because if I always talk about, you think about a dog with a shot collar on, okay? And he's running. He comes up on that underground fence, and all of a sudden that thing starts going, whoa, and he slams it. So, and I don't, no disrespect at all, but if you have the ball, if you're Mark Sears and you have the ball, okay, you have no collar on because you have the ball. You either get to the rim or you spread it. But if you don't have the ball and you're running down the court, all 4 of those guys have shot collars on, and they're running as fast as they can. But when they hit that 3-point line, it's like an underground fence. They're like, whoop, they stop, and they all spot up. And so there's really no mid-range jump shots.
Yeah.
You either have to defend the basket or you got to defend that perimeter. And that's the thing that's kind of abnormal about defense, is being able to get to the 3-point line and not go all the way back to the basket to defend. And I think that's the adjustment that Vanderbilt's going to have to do, is because if Mark Sears takes the ball going to the rim and there's one guy back, you really can't help out. You got to spray to the perimeter, and you got to see where those 3-point shooters are, because what he wants to do, really, unless it's an open layup, he's going to go in there and he's going to kick, and he knows exactly where those guys are. And that's what Vanderbilt has to do. They have to know exactly where those guys spot up in the 3-point line.
It feels like, Tim, they match up with Alabama decently. Like somebody yesterday asked me, they got a shot tonight? And I was like, yeah, they've got a shot. I know they're 11.5-point underdogs, but Tennessee, I think that line started at 7.5. Is this Vanderbilt team a team that no matter who you play, whether it's Alabama, even Auburn, right? I know Auburn's killed some people this year, but are they a team? And we saw it against Tennessee, so that could be our answer. But you got a lot more tougher games down the stretch here. Is this a Vanderbilt team that you think can consistently compete with? Now it's hard. They'll probably get blown out, eventually here, but can they compete with the big dogs in the SEC? And did you learn that in that Tennessee game?
Well, to be honest with you, I've learned that really throughout the season. When you go on the road at Virginia Tech, even though they're not great, and then at TCU, when you go on the road and you win anywhere, you've got to be tough and you got to be competitive and you got to do the right things. And that kind of started throughout the season. But then, you go to LSU, you win. That gives you some confidence in knowing that, you can go on the road in this league and win. And then even though we got beat by Mississippi State, I thought, we were down 5 with 4 minutes left in the game. I thought we came back from that. And then you go to Missouri, we're down 17. We come back. We're down 1 with, a couple minutes left, and we have 2 straight possessions. We turn the basketball over. So we've been competitive with everyone, even though we've lost a couple times, but we've been really competitive. And I expect to see that all the time. Now, Billy, to your point, is a blowout going to happen? Yeah, maybe. I mean, ask Tennessee when they went to Florida.
Right.
That could happen at any time. But, I think Coach Byington has these guys bought into, defensively, we're never out of it. We got to play hard, all this kind of stuff. I think that you see this, competitive nature in this team, and I think it will remain throughout the season.
You hinted at it a little bit, but the thing about this team that we kind of expected in the preseason was they're going to win a couple of games they shouldn't, and they're also going to get blown out a couple of times when they probably shouldn't, and they seem to have insulated themselves from the blowout pretty well. Just what do you think is allowed to do that, even though their shooting probably hasn't even been as good as we thought it would be to this point?
Yeah, I think Coach Byington probably thought that our shooting was going to be a little bit better. But again, you're playing in a league that is extremely athletic and, defensive oriented and that kind of stuff. Not that tonight's game is going to be all that defensive oriented, but there's a lot of good defenders in this league. And, I just think that, it's all about competitive spirit. And what he's done is he's gone out and he's gotten guys. I mean, you look at Chris Mannion, that kid is crazy competitive. Jason Edwards, crazy competitive. And they're older. That's the other thing. It's not like, you got to, don't get me wrong. Tyler Tanner is crazy competitive. But, it's not like you have all young freshmen in like Kentucky has done over the years. And, you have to develop that kind of cohesive competitiveness. I think these guys have been around the block. McLaughlin at, Boston College. You got A.J. Hoggard at Michigan State playing in that league. I think you got really competitive guys on this team.
Well, we'll see tonight. Tim will be on the call with Kevin Ingram. Their coverage starting at 5:30. You can hear them in Nashville on 94.9 The Fan. You can watch it tonight on SEC Network. Joey will have coverage as well. And then Saturday, Kentucky, 1:30 on ESPN. That, man, you win tonight. Buckle up inside Memorial Gym for Saturday, Tim. That could be another fun environment.
Man, I can't tell you how crazy that would be if we got to win tonight and came back home against Kentucky. You talk about the roof coming off of a place. It's going to be unbelievable anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that, that's another team that, you sit there and think, oh, Kentucky, the aura of Kentucky, the aura of Alabama. Both those teams, I think we match up in a way from an offensive standpoint that, we can get shots. We got to make shots, and we got to be consistent defensively tonight and Saturday as well.
Tim, appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. That's Tim Thompson. Great. His analysis is spot on. He's been with this team for a long time and played at Vanderbilt, loves Vanderbilt, and I think our fans and listeners love listening to him. Joey, we got some comments here and some questions. We'll get some of your final thoughts on Alabama tonight. We did have a Hemingway question. Will Hemingway be back, Joey?
I I don't know definitively enough to tell you yet. There should be something coming in the next couple days, I would think, though. As of now, I don't know that I'd expect him to be back, but I don't know definitively that he won't be.
And Clay, right at the beginning, said Will Purdue shaved his head. We had to reschedule Will Purdue to next Tuesday. Sorry, guys. I should have put that out on the board. But Will Purdue next Tuesday right here on the show. So looking
I think
forward
Billy
to
forgot
that.
to text him.
No, hey, it's all good. It was a little last minute, but that's okay. Clay, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what happens with Magnon, Huffman, Collins, and Tanner's minutes as we move farther into SEC play. I think we've seen it a little bit, Joey. Obviously, Magnon started and has been starting a lot of these. He's going to keep playing more, I think. Now, you can't have 3-4 fouls, right? And, as quick as he did in that game. So he's got to stop fouling. But that's the nature. Like, I think you can afford a foul or two from Magnon early. Just don't get that third and don't get that fourth in the second half because you need him on the floor. Huffman, his minutes have not naturally gone down, and it's nothing against him. He's been fine. But, you've got Hoggard in front of you. I would say Tanner's in front of Huffman right now too, Joey, as well. Collins, I mean, you keep throwing it down the way he did on Saturday. You'll play, and he's been really good on defense. Chris mentioned this Saturday. He's been really good late in games, just making some winning plays and especially some defensive steals. He poked it away from Lanier one time. But what do you think there, Joe? The minutes between Magnon, Huffman, Collins, and Tanner.
I think Magnon is a guy that probably fits better within what they want to do in SEC play versus in non-conference play. It almost reminds me of Jaylen Carey a little bit, where the officiating maybe lends more to his style of play. Maybe you're looking at the type of body that he's having to go up against, and you're putting him on the floor more as a result of that. So I'd expect his to stay the same. I think they need him, and I think we've talked about it a lot, but the role that he plays is very unique, and I think every team needs a guy like that. Every team needs a Tyler Nickel. Vanderbilt has both of those, and I think they're in a good spot because of that. Huffman and Tanner, to me, I don't think is a concrete thing. I think it's a matchup thing, and I think is Tyler Tanner the hot hand thing. That's what it really boils down to for me. Can Tyler Tanner be a factor in this matchup? And if he can't, we'll put Grant Huffman out on the floor for a long time because we know what we're going to get in him. Whereas Tanner, you got the higher ceiling option, but also you've got the opportunity or the possibility of the LSU game where he goes 0 for 4 and doesn't have a great outing. So that one to me seems more matchup based, and I think the minutes, if you look back, have kind of reflected that a little bit. I don't know that they've necessarily said that, but I think it's just who can complement Hoggard better, who can complement the lineups on the floor better. MJ Collins, I think, could even see a little bit of an increase, and I don't know where those minutes necessarily come from, maybe from Magnon a little bit, but that guy's going to get on the floor all the time. He's been playing better basketball recently. I don't think the numbers have popped out, but he's been a little bit more consistent, I think. And he's always going to get on the floor because of his defense, right? He's maybe their most talented perimeter defender. You can't keep that guy off the floor. And even if he's not making shots, even if he's taking some bad ones once in a while or making some ill-advised plays, I think there's a fast break, either South Carolina or Tennessee, where could have dumped it off to Edwards for a wide open layup, but he tried to make something happen by himself. I think those are the types of plays you got to eliminate with him, but I think they're going to grow with him on the floor because of his defense and just because of the skill set he has, which is different than all those guys at this point.
Yeah, and Collins, I mean, if he keeps hitting that mid-range jump shot, it seems like he hits a couple of those a game, and maybe not every game, but I think he gives you that too. You'll start to see him more as well. Hunter earlier said, "Why did they not play Magnon much in the non-con?" I don't remember that being much of a factor. Joey, do you? Did you see some limited minutes from Magnon?
I don't know that I saw limited minutes. I thought I saw more limited impact at that point just because I think he thrives in close games where the body types are more similar to his. And that's where I think the impact has been made recently versus in non-conference play. Because I think in non-conference play, you're looking for who's going to score it, who's going to work well with this lineup, who's going to be able to shut this guy down. In SEC play, it's a lot of matchup-based things and a lot of things to where you know who your scorers are, you know what your offense is going to be, and you try to find guys who can slide into other roles, and that's what Magnon does at this point. And in non-conference play, I think they were looking for him to score a little bit too much.
Hunter says, "I almost cried when we fouled to put them on the line to tie the game. Been watching Vandy for a while and know we like to lose those games." Joey, I think we were thinking a similar thing as well. Lanier's going to hit both of these, and we're going to get free basketball, and we might have to head back up to the Crow's Nest. But that one of the better finishes, I mean, we've seen in that gym, and man, that place was on its feet. Hunter also says, hopefully Big Blue Nation doesn't take over on Saturday. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them that are going have already bought up their tickets, but it will be interesting. Like, say Vanderbilt does find a way to win tonight. What's the ratio? I think it was 50-50 Saturday. Maybe at least close to that. I mean, Vanderbilt fans were louder. I'll say that. But that's probably due to the students, of course.
Billy, did you see the Matthew Fisher Davis tweet during the game?
I quote tweeted that. That was awesome.
That was what I wanted to bring up when I heard about that foul. That was the great self-awareness out of him, honestly.
Yeah. No, and the fact that he could laugh at that, I didn't think that was the case, but he was able to. Danny says Collins needs more minutes. I don't disagree with that. I mean, but the thing is, Collins had that's another guy that needs to be a little bit more consistent, I think. If you look at the whole of the season, right? He's been pretty good in SEC play, but that's what I would say there. I thought Huffman was sick, Willie says.
Yes.
yeah, that he was. I mean, I doubt he still is, but
yeah,
he was probably getting over a sickness.
I think Byington's a little worried about the availability report when he talks in his pressers, because he would not really indicate whether he was sick or not. He just said, look at his face. And I think that told you the story. But if you looked at Grant Huffman on the floor before that game, Billy and I and Brandon were all like, man, that guy looks miserable. He looks like he wants to lay in his bed right now and not come out for the next 2 days.
Yeah, I don't think the availability, I do feel like some coaches, like Clark Lee will just tell you, I think he'll tell you a lot of what's on his mind. But some coaches are a lot more secretive.
I think he's worried about getting fined. I think that's the big thing, rather than being secretive.
Yeah, you're probably right. Dennis, the line is 11.5 for Alabama for all my degenerates out there. Not sure I want to touch this one. LOL. I don't think I'd want to touch this one either, Joe, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vanderbilt covers that. Now, there's the potential for this one to get out of hand tonight as well. Alabama can do that to teams, especially at home. But what do you think there? 11.5. Would I know you're not a betting man, Joey, but what would you recommend there?
I'm gonna steer clear of recommending. And this is the most high variance game Vanderbilt will play all year. It's two teams that shoot a lot of threes, especially Alabama. It's two teams that are really up tempo, or there's going to be a lot of possessions, and you never really know what you're going to get from that Alabama team. That's why I've kind of struggled to trust even their best teams in March, even though I think at times they've been more talented than the teams they've lost to in the tournament. Just, man, you're looking at it and say, wow, they're going to have to hit some tough shots to win this game. And that's kind of the thing with Alabama for me over Donato's tenures. They're always awesome. There's always a chance that they lay up a stinker, though. And I think Byington's team has a chance at doing that too. It's just they've insulated themselves pretty well from that to this point. Tonight, though, I have no idea what's going to happen, Billy. I think, like I said, Vandy could lose by 30, and I wouldn't be surprised. But also Alabama could lay a stinker, and Vanderbilt wins by 10. And I wouldn't be surprised at either outcome just because of the style of play in this game.
Joey, we got our first super chat.
No way.
He said, appreciate the coverage, gents. Lunch on me for one of you at least.
Wow, so, Dennis.
My guy.
What a stud.
That's awesome. We'll get in touch, Dennis. I would imagine you're a Vandy fan, but we'll probably take you up on that. But yeah, we'd love some more super chats. I know Chris Lee's all about the super chats. I didn't even know if we had to enable them, but apparently they're enabled, Joey. So
Dennis will go down in Vandy 24/7 history forever.
Absolutely will. Absolutely. And hopefully he's a trendsetter too. But first ever super chat here on Vandy 24/7 live.
Billy, you want to get hibachi?
Yeah, we'll split it.
Guess we won't be going back to hibachi anytime soon.
Oh gosh, that time of year. Clay, thoughts on the late game subs? Fans are complaining about them. I mean, that's what you do late in games, and they were struggling to score. I know they missed a couple of shots, but like bringing Huffman in, That he was big, like he saved that ball from going out of bounds there, as Tim said, was huge. I don't know if you have a thought there, Joey, but that's kind of what you do late in games.
It is, especially when you got a guy like Jason Edwards, who I think they've identified as a guy they don't want on the floor defensively at that point of games, but he needs to be on the court offensively. That's why I think so much of that happens. And also with the way they have to play their front court matchups, I think that happens too. The only time I was really worried about it was when Edwards and Hogard together were not on the floor at the end of the game Saturday. I think that was a thing that I was concerned about. But otherwise, I tend to think that Byington knows what I'm doing more than I do, so I kind of just dismiss it and just mind my own business and cover the game. But yeah, I think that's just kind of something you do at the end of games, Billy.
Davis, Tennessee slows the pace to allow teams to stay in it. Will Alabama run away with it because they do what we do, but with better athletes and better basketball players?
It's a great question.
That is.
Yeah.
I'm worried. I am worried about that.
Yeah.
Slightly.
I don't think they're the worst matchup ever. Honestly, they do. Davis is right. I think they do what Vanderbilt does with better players, and they do it better than Vanderbilt does. But also, Big Cliff, I don't think is a guy that you're going to dump it down to and he's just going to kill you on the interior. I think he'll catch a lot of alley-oops like Okpara did, but Vanderbilt could beat that. I do think that the shot making and the variance of it is something worth watching with Alabama too, because they're going to take good ones from three probably, but threes by nature of being longer distance shots often don't go in even when they're good looks. And also Bama turns it over a little bit. Mark Sears has not been immune to turnover issues throughout the year. A lot of Alabama's guys have not. At times they try to play too fast, I think. So I don't think it's the worst matchup ever for them. I think it's actually probably the second best out of Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, Alabama. But obviously I think it's number two by a pretty decisive margin behind Tennessee. I thought that was the best matchup for them out of those four teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went and beat Tennessee again, just because I think the matchup does play in their favor. But Alabama's really good, Billy, and regardless of how the matchup looks, it's going to be a tough game, especially at Coleman.
A couple of good comments here from Danny. Start slow and finish slow and somehow keep winning games. LOL. That's a good point. I mean, South Carolina felt like that whole game was slow, starting slow and finishing slow, but somehow they found a way to win it, which was big. And somebody earlier said that South Carolina game was just as big as the Tennessee win. And yeah, I mean, you don't beat South Carolina. Maybe there's a different feeling going into Tennessee and you don't carry that over. Another good comment from Danny. I think they are offensively way more talented, talking about Alabama, but defensively, I think we are way more disruptive. Mm-hmm. We got to remember that. And I think people forget about that with this Vanderbilt team, Joey, that I think I told somebody yesterday, I think they're top half defensively in the league. And in terms of disruption, I know there's a disruption rate, turnover rate, whatever it is. Vanderbilt's got to be up there. And, you know, against Alabama, that can give you some extra buckets. And their defense, they're 16th in the SEC in defense, right? So that high variance between their offense and their defense.
Yeah, another thing, too, with Vanderbilt that I think matters is how the other team responds to aggressive defense, because I think you're going to see some teams in the league, Mississippi State being one of them, where their guards are really just not going to turn it over against what Vanderbilt does because they're too good and they're too composed. I think Zakai Ziegler actually got a little bit rattled by what Vanderbilt did, and that surprised me. If you watch back the Tyler Tanner steal, it looked like Ziegler had no idea that was even a fathomable thing that could happen. And I think that could take some guys by surprise, but also at a point, you're running up against teams that aren't going to make mistakes. And when you try to force them to make mistakes, I think that could get you in trouble a little bit. So I don't think tonight is the time where that ends, and I don't think Kentucky is either. But at some point, you're going to look at it and be like, oh, crap, this team doesn't turn it over. And that might be something that hangs them up a little bit. Byington said they're going to continue to be aggressive, but I think at a point, if he's in a game where a team has 5 turnovers early in the second half or midway through the second half, he's going to be like, man, we're just going to have to drop back. Because I think something we talked about a lot throughout the Stackhouse tenure was he wanted to be really aggressive defensively, kind of like Byington's doing now. But at times, he was hampered in doing that by the opposing guards being too good. And he was also hampered by his roster. And I think at some point, Byington is going to have to realize that there's a time and a place for the aggressiveness. And I think the time and the place is not as often as we would think it would be, because I think these are college guys who are going to turn it over just by nature of being college guys, but also there's a balance there. And I don't think Vanderbilt's really been tested much against teams that haven't turned it over and haven't given them free points, because that's such a huge recipe for them, is getting those free points.
Good comment from Willie here. He said Edwards' defense is a narrative. He had a team high plus minus. Translation, the offense suffers and the all defense lineup still gives up points. So that is, the offense defense lineup thing, I think we'll probably be talking about the rest of the season. Joey, when you have the offense in there, they give up points. But this is a good point here from Willie. He's saying the all defense lineup still gives up points. Well, you're in the SEC, so you're you're gonna give up points. I think what you need turnovers from that all defense lineup. You need second chance points, especially if Magnon's in there. But I think that the difference between the all defense and the all offense, great offense beats great defense, right? So I think you'll see more of the all offense lineup. But I thought that was interesting late in that game, Joey, against Tennessee, with how quickly they were subbing and who they were putting in at what time.
Yeah, I'm not a defensive evaluator, I'll tell you that now, but what I'll tell you is the guys on staff watch a lot more tape than I do, and they pulled Edwards towards the end of a couple SEC games when it was close on defense. So that makes me hesitate to think that it's a narrative, because I don't think that those guys are necessarily pulling guys based off of what me and Billy are saying on podcasts. So that's why I say that, not necessarily because I think he's been an outstandingly bad defender, because I don't think he has been, but I think they don't feel super comfortable with him on the floor defensively at the end of games, and that's why I think we talk the way we do.
All right, good question here from Davis. Based on the matchups, who has the best chance to be the hero tonight? Based on the matchups, I mean, you got Big Cliff Awori down low, so maybe not Carey. And you got Mark Sears at point guard, which Hogard would likely be on, I would guess, Joey.
Him or Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Who's the
Edwards
hero?
was on Ziegler, wasn't he? At times.
At times, but you also, and Hogard was on Lanier a good bit. So, but based on some of the matchups tonight, who do you think could be the hero for Vanderbilt?
Man, that's an interesting question. I think more than any matchup, it's nickel, just because I think in a game like this where you're going to have guys rotating off schedule, things along those lines, nickel is the most dangerous guy if he gets open. And I think his 5 or 6 shots this game could really swing it. That's where I look more than any individual matchup of Edwards and Sears or Amorie and Carey, things along those lines. I just look at it and say, if nickel gets a few open shots and he doesn't hit them, that makes this game different than if he does hit them. And if he does hit them, it could be a really fun night for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Alabama, looking at their turnovers, they average 13 turnovers per game, which I don't think that's a crazy number, Joey. But
especially with the style they play and the tempo.
Right. So I don't think it'll be easy to turn them over tonight, but like get a few from Sears. Sears and Nelson average a couple of turnovers a game. LeBaron Philon is another really good guard for them. Youngblood. I mean, Joey, they have guards out the wazoo. Like Youngblood, Wrightsell, Holloway. Darian Reed he's in the front court, but he is questionable right tonight, Joey?
Yeah,
so,
and Wrightsell's out too.
And Wrightsell's out. Okay, so good point there, because that's one less guard you have to deal with if you're Vanderbilt. Let's see here. Yeah, Dennis, I'm with you. I don't know much about the matchups of the Bama side. Bama's they're guards. I mean, I look at that, and I'm with you, Joe. I think Nickel's got a really good chance. You could say that every game about him. I've told you before, like, you get 3 to 4 threes out of Nickel, you've got a really good shot of winning that game, I think. Now you need Edwards too, and Clay said needed Edwards 30 piece tonight. That'd be nice for Vanderbilt. I think they would take that. We're gonna wrap up here in just a second. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We've got up to like 35 live viewers today, so hopefully we're able to keep that rolling. Clay, what's the true mean for Carey's play? Should we expect him to be able to replicate what he did against Tennessee consistently? Joey, that's the question of the hour. If he can, This team's in really, really good shape. It just depends. Like, it was a big matchup game against Tennessee. Like, when you saw Milicic on him, Carey was going to work, right? But yeah, you're not always going to have a guy like a Milicic, stuck on you, But Carey's athletic. He's more athletic than a lot of these 5 men, Joey. So I think it certainly can.
Yeah, I think there's a path to consistent production throughout SEC play. A lot of it is, are they intentional about dumping the ball down to him? And also, I kind of struggle to figure out how developed he actually is at this point, because non-conference play, he looked like a project, and then now he looks like the real deal. So I wonder, is this what we're going to see from him every game? It's a great question. Just because I initially thought maybe he's a year away after a couple non-conference games from being a consistent go-to big in the SEC every game. I wonder if maybe he's a little bit closer to that than we had anticipated, just because of the whistle, just because of the body types, things along those lines. I'll leave you with this, though. I think he's their most talented big, and obviously this doesn't say much. He's the most talented big since Liam Robbins, and I don't think it's particularly close. It's a guy who can do it all, and people have been frustrated by his floor game and him putting it on the floor too much, but that's going to be a huge asset for him down the line. And I think as he gets older and he learns how to kind of control that a little bit more, people are going to love that part of his game too. He has potential to be one of the better Vanderbilt bigs in recent memory.
Alabama favored by 11.5 tonight, 6:00 tip-off on SEC Network. Big one tonight for Vanderbilt. Big road test. Alabama's crowd is going to be into it. They'll be ready to go. The pace, I would imagine, will be high tonight. And then you roll into Saturday, the Kentucky Wildcats. That'll be a 1:30 tip-off. We'll probably be back here with you Thursday. Probably try to get something out on Thursday. Round table tomorrow. Hopefully we get Luke Wyatt back in the fold. But yeah, apologies on Will Purdue today. I think we replaced him pretty well though with Tim Thompson and Joey Dwyer here today. But Joey, I think you're making the trip. Are you making the trip now to Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave early. Apparently, it's supposed to snow in Atlanta. So, Billy, I'm a wimp when it comes to weather. So we're gonna get out of here now.
I respect that, Joey. Appreciate it. Good luck with the coverage tonight, and I'll talk next week or later this week.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Joey Dwyer doing a great job covering Vanderbilt basketball for us, previewing tonight's matchup, Vanderbilt and Alabama. Thanks, guys, for the super chat, especially Dennis there. We want to give you guys good coverage of Vanderbilt, and we know, especially with what they're doing right now on the hardwood, especially on the gridiron as well. We want to keep this rolling, and you guys are a huge part of that. So appreciate all you guys tuning in. Again, we'll be back here tomorrow, 10 o'clock, recapping tonight's Vanderbilt Alabama game. And Dennis, thanks a ton for consistently putting this content together, guys. Appreciate it very, very much. And we're going to keep these rolling. But a couple of notes. Like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and keep these comments and questions going. You'll get notified every time we go live at 10 a.m. every day. Well, Monday through Thursday, that is. But also, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet, please do. 50% off right now. Great offer. Like I said, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, just email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.